Welcome to the Digital Dialogues podcast by Virtual Vision, hosted by Amanda Stichter. In each episode, we talk to real people with real insights as they share their real experiences. Our guests are some of the service industry's top experts. Covering a wide range of topics, you are sure to hear truth bombs and industry wisdom that you won't want to miss. The Digital Dialogues podcast. Tune in on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the Digital Dialogues podcast brought to you by Virtual Vision. I'm your host, Amanda Stichter, and I am excited to be joined with yet another industry expert today. And I think I can't wait to share the story, maybe a little bit of how I met you, because I want to dive into that a little bit today.
Oh, this would be great, because actually I don't know.
But today I am joined by Greg Marthaler. Greg is with SFY, and he's got a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of industry wisdom to share, and so I'm super excited. Greg, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I am just going to ask if you could get started by telling me a little bit about yourself. Who is SFY, and how'd you get started in the restoration industry?
Yeah. Let's see here. Myself is probably, I've been an entrepreneur for my whole life. So it's probably all the way starting from cutting grass. And I made more money cutting grass than when I gave that up and worked at a pizza restaurant as a dish boy. I desperately wanted to go back to cutting grass because $10, $15, a yard, and you cut 20 of them a week. You make actually pretty decent money. And that was, 30 some plus years ago now. So it's a long journey as you keep going through there. Really,
ironically, I have to say quick, the number of people that I've had on this that have said that they started cutting grass, I guess it's just like the common base starter.
Base starter, it is, right? Like, it's just like you grab dad's lawnmower, go cut someone else's yard, make $10, and you make really good money. It's really cool and really exciting. So I'll say probably the next major hurdle for me is to start a couple companies, but I got into the roofing space and I started a roofing company with one of my best friends. And we owned and operated that for about 8 years and sold it. As an entrepreneur, it's probably one of the greatest things is to start a company, build it, and sell it for some money, right? That's like the I have arrived moment, and I actually know what I'm doing in business. So that's kind of how I got into the space. And then from there, in the roofing sector, a lot of people need help in the administrative work of paperwork and working with the insurance company. So I do that in the roofing side, as well as I also do in the restoration, water mitigation side of it. And slowly built the company, and now we've been up and running now for almost 8 years now. So it's kind of shocking how long we've been in here grinding away and building and fighting against the carrier. It's kind of really my birth of how I got into this space and what it looks like. So it's been pretty good journey.
That's very cool. That's very cool. I didn't realize that I knew you had worked in the roofing, that you did a lot in the roofing space, but I did not realize that you had a company.
Yeah, it was, we weren't huge, we did anywhere between $3 to $4 million, and probably today it's probably closer to doing probably like 6 to 7 million, just because the value of roofs and all that other stuff changed.
Right.
And it's been a big transformation adjustment in navigating that. I was really good at the administrative side, the office side of it. So I started SFY because that was what I was really, really good at, and went down that path in developing. And SFY, we're growing quite a bit and a lot. So we went from a team of 3 people when we started SFY. It was myself, my partner, and his wife. To now we're at like 92 staff members.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, we'll probably hit 100 by the end of the month in the training, development, and planning, and where you go. So there's many hurdles and roads that I have learned from in growing a company, right? That's just,
Right.
process, systems, checks, balances, people, resources. Um, I think probably in the roofing side, I think you can turn salespeople over a little easier. As much as I
Hmm.
hate to say that, you kind of just look at them as checks.
Sure.
In the scaling a company, the more that you learn to value people as an asset, the farther you get. And I think roofing companies
Mm.
that do understand when they scale, when you start getting into 7, 8, 9, 10 million, you begin to understand the value of people and management and skills and
Mhm.
leadership and what they could do for your company if you're going to get to the next playing field. Um,
Sure.
but a lot of companies can get to $3, $4 million. Just what they say, training people horrible. And
Right.
this is kind of what it is. But it's been a great learning curve
Yeah.
in
I was
creating
actually just
company culture.
reading a book last night that spoke to, so many companies just by pure like grit and hustle alone can get to that point of like you grow your company, but then you hit the pain point and like what you do past there is really what makes or breaks where you're going to go.
Right.
Um, And I do want to dive into that conversation a little bit with you today, specifically around scaling and growth and what that
Right.
looks like to do well within a
Yeah.
company. But I got to
Okay.
pause us in our
Yes.
conversation. Okay, so when I entered working in the restoration space,
Right.
I don't know, 4 years ago now,
Okay.
I had a nickname for you. I've never told you
Oh,
this.
this is great. This is great.
You were the rubber chicken guy. Maybe
Yep.
I'm sure plenty
Yep.
of other people have called you this.
Yes.
So, for those of you who don't know, if you've ever been at a show in this industry where SFY is, all of a sudden you're going to be walking, and then one of these little things, these little rubber chickens, is going to smack you in the back of your head, and it's all because of Greg. So I was like, you were just the rubber chicken guy. That's how I
Right.
knew you. In fact, I don't think I knew your first name for a while. I'm a little nervous, ashamed to admit
That's
that.
okay. It's okay.
Um, okay, but why on earth? Like, where did rubber chickens come from?
Rubber Chicks came from, right? So all of us do a lot of Zoom meetings, right? We're just in Zoom
Yeah,
meetings, especially when you're growing, you're in meetings, right? And so as much as I hate to
right.
say, we periodically get bored and we
What?
start scrolling through Amazon, right? Like, so I'm scrolling through Amazon and I'm looking for a toy to play with my nephew with, right? At this time, he's about
Okay.
3 years old, right? So he's 3 years old, and I'm like, what toy can I play with my nephew? Order Amazon. So I order a bag of these chickens, and I spent the next 4 hours the next day playing with him, just shooting a chicken against a wall, right? He would go, he'd love it, he'd laugh, he'd chickle, like, run, grab the chicken. He tried to shoot himself, he doesn't know how to shoot it, and so I'm just shooting him. He's having a blast. We're just having a great time.
Yeah.
And then I have a next show. We went to the Rainbow International, which is PTN, if I remember correct. The big
Mhm.
franchise. There's all sorts of different stuff. I had ordered 300 chickens to bring to the show because I was like, I think this could be kind of fun to do with a bunch of people, and I did it myself. I was like, this could go well. I waited till the end of the second day. It's a 3-day show, so the tail end of the show, and I started bringing out and shooting them to fellow booth vendors, right, and just by MO, right, and I'm shooting them, and eventually everyone's starting to have a lot of fun in shooting them, and
Mhm.
then about the last half of the third day, I have all these people coming to me asking me for chickens, right? They're asking me for the rubber chickens and doing it. And that is literally the major birth. The next show I go to is RoofCon. RoofCon, I order about 600 chickens
I
I
was gonna
bring
say
to the
is
show.
massive. Yeah.
And you'll hear my salespeople, they were 100% against the chickens, right? They thought it was assaulting. I'm like just a kid, and like you're gonna make people mad, frustrated, and all this other stuff. And they weren't really having shooting the chickens, but I'm opening these chickens, and I'm like, they take a second. They're in these little packages, and you got to open them, and I'm shooting them all over the place. And my sales team is extremely frustrated with me that I'm shooting chickens, and they're kind of like, and I go out and I take like 15, 20 of them. I'm giving different boosts, and we start these little wars and all this other stuff. And it's just kind of stuck, and I have a lot of fun with it. And I think probably the other side is I do 20 to 30 shows a year, right? And that's a lot, right? It's 2-3 day shows. You're there. First day is a really good hard grind day. Day two, usually the first half for day two can usually be good, but the second half, day 2 and 3 are usually super slow. There's leads coming, but it's real slow. And so I like to have a little bit of fun. I'm a big kid, and so I just started shooting them everywhere. And now I'm known as the chicken guy. I bring chickens, and it's a lot of fun. And I have stories beyond stories of shots that I've done that I've been pretty epic from like video stuff. Like probably one of my best. So I have 2 that I'll share.
Okay.
One, where this was a company cam event. We're there and they have dessert out. All the vendors go to dessert, and the vendors are there's no one there. They're just dessert. So I'm shooting them at random people. And I shoot a chicken, and it kind of skims a little lower, and this guy's eating a cake at his booth. The chicken skims the top of the cake of all the frosting and splatters chicken, like the frosting all across it, and he has got a black shirt, it's white frosting all over him. It was like, I'm literally just sitting there like, I wish I had this on video, because you couldn't, to recreate it's really difficult, right? So it just goes all over him, it's everywhere. I get him a new shirt, apologize to do whatever. It's great, we had fun. The next one I just did just a little bit ago, I thought was a pretty epic shot. I usually don't have amazing epic shots, so I'm going around. It's the last day shooting. I have like another 100 chickens to give out, so I'm shooting them. And there's a group of people standing together, and I'm just randomly shooting people, right? And there's a guy. I feel bad for him a little bit, and so he's standing there, but he has a little bald spot right on the top of his head. He has a little bit of hair, but he has a little bald spot. I shoot the chicken, and the chicken flies and parks on top of the guy's bald spot. He's got a chicken, and he doesn't realize it's there. And so I think now he's probably devastated and probably doing Rogaine for the rest of his life on this, and I chum it up and have fun with him and, do whatever. But it's, those are just a couple of the stories I have that I do constantly. I almost bought a $3,000 computer because I shot a chicken, hit a coffee cup, spilled on the laptop, but the guy briefly saved the laptop. So that was probably my lowest potential costly chicken shot that I've ever done. But it's great, and the fun part is I get people to shoot chickens that would never shoot chickens, right? And it's a great conversational start. It's a great piece, right? A lot of people, and like if you use it correctly, you can use it to get into connect with people, right? And that's if you use it properly, right? Like how do you build a relationship? How do you connect with people as vendors? How do you get in and talk, right? Because they're walking by, you're trying to say hi, they're not interested. It's something that I do that gets it right. And I'll shoot people that walk back my booth, shoot them in the back. And I'll shoot them again in the chest as soon as they turn around, and I'm like, come on, shoot back, right? Then we start a conversation, right? So I use it as leverage going forward. But you have to own it, right? You can't just kind of shoot it. There's a lot of people that shoot chickens and they duck and look around and like, I didn't shoot it. And I'm like, it's, so periodically I've had a couple upset people. So I'm not going to deny that people do get upset, but I usually can defuse it. Pretty well. So
I love it. I mean, I have to ask, do you like order these right before each show, or do you literally just have like a room at your office full of rubber chickens?
I order about 1,000 at a time. And the thing is this is the horrible part. So I buy so much of them. I understand like the quality grade. The quality grade of the chicken is diminishing because they're going to a cheaper grade because they make more money on the profit of making them. I'm so disappointed. The cheaper ones don't fly as far. So I'm very particular about my type of chicken. I haven't found my new supplier yet that builds a more robust, heavier weighted chicken. And I've done other animals. The chicken is the only one that you can shoot and not feel like you get hurt. There's other ones that have like little animals like snakes and pigs and some of those.
Sure.
And they hurt. Like you get pelted with one of those, you'd start a fight, right? And that's not, I'm not into starting fights. So this is great because it doesn't hurt as much as like a rubber band or something like that. It's just a grade below it, which is, it's perfect. I like it. So
that's awesome.
That's my fun chicken.
There have been many a show where I'm like, oh, well, Greg must be here because there goes the chicken.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, Yeah. And, and other people shoot them now periodically, and then they think I'm somewhere because I'm the one that does it all. Right. And it's just,
Right.
it's just,
It's a good
it's great.
thing.
It's my little thing, sales team. They
Sure.
finally got to it. And what turned their mark is that there was a lady that was about 75, 80 years old and comes up and asks Paige, hey, look, do you have some of those chickens? I want to shoot a couple, right? And then after that, and she's full on business. She looks like she's a lawyer, right? Decked out, blazer, nice, like. And then after that, she kind of realized, okay, I do think, so she's kind of on board, still kind of hesitant, but it's fun.
Sure.
It's enjoyable. So I'm the
I
guy that
love it.
pushes boundaries all the time. So it's kind of what I do.
I think that's great. I think that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, well, I obviously didn't invite you here just to talk about
Right.
rubber chickens, but
Yes.
it is some pretty good conversation starter.
Right. Yeah. It is.
Okay, so I want to go back to something you said at the beginning. So you talked
Yes.
about owning this roofing business, scaling it up, getting to that moment of like, okay, we're going to sell this business, and you said like that's sort of like the pinnacle, right, of being
Right.
an entrepreneur. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about like scaling and growth and identifying, those sorts of details, and in your journey, what lessons you learned along the way. Now, even getting into SFY and seeing that major growth.
Right.
I mean, very soon to be 100 employees. I mean, that's huge.
Right.
So is there like a principle that you use as your foundation when you talk about like, here's what I'm going to do to scale my business and to scale it well? What drives that for you? What do you go back to no matter your size?
Yeah. I think probably one thing that I've learned in the roofing side, in growing, because it's probably the only company before all the other ones were like one-offs and one-man band type shops. And there was like I was a mortgage broker, I owned my own mortgage company multiple times. I worked in the office, but I would say one of the key things is understanding people and treating them as assets.
Mm,
And then with that, then holding them accountable to that process, which is easily said, not easily done
mm,
in it. And then I'd say company culture after that.
okay.
That I tend to lean on quite a bit. And when you start valuing people as assets, you just look at people different, right? And how do you help coach, train, grow, where it's going to get to the next level in there. I think in the beginning part, as you're growing as a company, is really big, and some of the
Mhm.
go-tos that I look at.
It brings to mind, I saw a quote, gosh, just a couple days ago, but talking about, you know, forgive me, I have no idea who actually
That's okay.
said this quote, but I saw it online and it said, you know, business owners, we don't train. You train dogs. You coach and mentor people. And I
Right.
think that's kind of what you're getting at when you say like viewing people as assets, right? I
Right.
mean, expand on that a little bit. What does that physically look like?
Yeah. So I think let's see. So I think part of it has to do with like when you talk about coaching, training, and getting someone to where they need to be, and when you start getting bigger as a company and holding people accountable, I think there's a few things that when you're scaling in a company organization, you have to understand the role and position they have, and are they
Mm-hmm.
able to accomplish that role and position?
Hmm.
If they're not able to accomplish that role and position, and I've been using, let's say they need to be good at A, B, and C tasks, right? Whatever those three tasks are. And usually what happens, I find when we have issues in scaling and growing, is we find someone good at A and B, but they're not good at C.
Hmm.
And we let C go for a very long time, and we don't ever address C with the individual. And one of the scenarios that I like when you talk about coaching is see if I can get it right. Things that happen in your organization, you either coach or allowed.
Hmm.
And it takes 100% ownership from a management side in it, right? So let's say someone comes in late. all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Me as the owner, I'm allowing that to happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so and it gets to the level of, well, at some point then I would have to fire them if they're not going to come in. Well, then you're allowing it to happen. So if they don't understand that they're going to get let go and you give
Right.
idle threats, then you're allowing that habitual habit to take place, right? So part of it
Mm-hmm.
is identifying, when you look at people as assets, is understanding the things that they're really good at and the things that they're weak at. And either A, they need to move somewhere else in your organization, or you need to coach them on the thing that they're weak at.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's not the thing that they're going to get, then this is probably the hard part when we look at assets. Then it's like, hey, look, we need to find someone else in this seat to make the company to get to the next place. Because if
Right.
this person stays here and I need them to be good at A, B, and C, and they're not good at C, that means someone else in the organization has to fulfill that C.
Mm-hmm.
And this other individual that's fulfilling C for this other individual over here is going to be mad and frustrated, right? So they were
Right.
supposed to be good at this. The other people are good at this, but the other team's having to pick up the other slack for this person that's not good at here. So part of it's just holding accountability. I got to hold people accountable to what it's going through. It doesn't mean right away, like, hey, look, they're not good at C, I'm firing them, right? That's not
Right.
the approach. It's like, hey, look, we got to coach you. We got to spend time in developing you to get C better. And then at some point,
Mm-hmm.
if that doesn't happen, and the growth isn't there, they're not doing things to better themselves, then at that point you need to evaluate, is there somewhere else in the organization that they would do better, or
Right.
do we need to let the individual go and find someone else to come in that seat? And those are tough calls, right? And I think what it gets tough is when you have someone's been in your organization, you've allowed C to go, they've been with you 4 or
Mm.
5 years, you start approaching C, and then you have to let the individual go because of C, right? And those
Right.
aren't fun conversations to have, and they're hard.
Right.
They're
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy by any means. And in developing and doing that. Um, so that's kind of probably one of my main premises that I've been focusing on lately, especially to get to the next plateau of where we want to go. My new phrase, we did, to get to $1 to $4 million, we did X and did great to get here, but to get to from 4 to 10 is a completely different path, right? So whatever
Yeah.
companies did to get from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, those are great, but to get to the next plateau, you're gonna have to reevaluate your organization and maybe lay new
Mm-hmm.
train tracks down to get to the next
Yeah.
spot.
And how do you think companies do that successfully? Because I mean, and you kind of said it, like sometimes what got you to that first plateau, I mean, you might just stay there if you assume that what got you there is going to get you anything forward. It's a totally different world to then get to that
Right.
next level of growth. I mean, sometimes it means drastic changes. How do you approach that well?
I think as leaders, we think we need to have all the answers and solutions.
Hmm.
When you learn to bring in your team to help you solve problems, there's a
Mm-hmm.
few things that happen. There's an element of vulnerability, right? So one of the things here at SFI, we're working on trying to increase profitability, right? Like doing okay, but profitability is not where it needs to be. So
Sure.
how do we create better profitability, right? And some owners are afraid to discuss these types of things with their team, right? Like they don't want
Mm-hmm.
to bring in hard conversations that they feel only the owner needs to have, versus bringing in your team to help get to a goal, to get to where you're trying to go. So instead of
Right.
yourself solving it, now I have 5, 6 other people understanding where we're going, and I'm now
Mm-hmm.
using the minds of 6 other people, right? Like,
Right.
they're leaders and managers in your team for a reason, so they're doing something really good, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
have different key insights. Now, obviously, you as the owner or director will probably help execute whatever you land on, but the other side is there's better buy-in, right? So there's better buy-in when management feels like they're part of solving a solution
Mm-hmm.
versus you as the owner trying to cram a solution through. Um,
Sure.
and I think that's a really big thing, especially when you start getting into huge changes and
Mm-hmm.
what we've allowed and where it is and where we're trying to go, and casting vision constantly and cheering them on and all that type of stuff. I think is a really big step forward when you really dive into stuff. When you hit certain thresholds, you're gonna have to look at yourself, like me as a leader, like, hey, look, what am I doing wrong, right? Like, as much as I hate to say that, what am I doing wrong to not get us to the next level, right? And we don't want to say that it's my team. Well, you're the leader of the whole organization, right? So you have to look at yourself and what do I need to do to get better, or what do I need to allow my team to be able to do to get better, and to get to the next level, and talk to them, and where are some of the pain points, and especially when you start getting, I'd probably say 50, 60 employees plus, you have to rely on you can't do everything yourself. It's virtually impossible. And you need the buy-in from other people, and to get there to solve those problems to scale to the next level.
And where does culture come into play in that? Because you mentioned that before. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously, I'm a big proponent of like transparency and the fact that like culture is incredibly important. Also, though, no company is perfect, right? So where's the balance of that?
Right. So we have, my partner uses a good phrase that I like. We identify a problem, we figure out how we're going to solve the problem, and how do we make sure the problem doesn't exist. Those are problem, scenario, solutions, not ripping on people and diving into an individual and going negative thought process talk. And I try my best to eliminate that and shut that down immediately, as well as within the ownership. I'll tell a story. This is probably, and it's pretty known. I have a couple stories I've done actually of this. I was probably about 22 people, and I have a couple key leaders at my upper company that help when I'm not around. They make key decisions, right? They have full authority to do whatever, right? When I travel, like, they have to be able to make these autonomy decisions without me, and they just inform me. So I have about 3 people in this circle that I have. It's myself, my accounting manager, and my general manager. Is like they can fire someone, right? You're done, no longer here. So we had 22 people. I found out my accounting manager and my estimator manager, and I had 2 estimator managers. Both of them were frustrated on some stuff and how we were growing and developing, as well as an assistant and another one. So there's 5 individuals in this organization, in this tier. I overheard basically someone else. We record all our calls and conversations and whatever, and someone overheard one of the other managers talking to another manager, trash talking the entire company, and just negative talk about individuals, people, and slander. Like, going back to, we're not talking about a problem, we're not talking about how to solve it, and we're not talking how to, make sure it doesn't happen again. We're talking about character of people, what it looks like, and not developing anyone, right? So they did this for about an hour and a half on the phone, and then we dive into it, and I find these are 5 people in it. I'm 22 people, and I need to hire 3. Me as an owner, the next day I go through, talk to a lot of people, right? Just, what do I do? How do you unwind this, right? Because other managers heard, and they're trash talking everyone in the company, right? To be honest, I make all the difficult decisions, so hey, look, like, I get it. Like, I'm going to get the heat of stuff. So it doesn't bother me as much, because I'm just used to that type of stuff. And so in one day, I fired 5 people.
Wow.
Right. So I cut literally almost 25% of my company in one day, and I needed to hire 3. And, and I had the accounting, right? And I didn't have a backstop to the accounting. So it meant I took on the role of the accounting manager, right? Since I know how to do that, and I did all these other things and developed. And, internally the company, right? And it was a pretty emotional day for me, because some of the people, I mean, when you up high, you get pretty close to these people. So part of it was hurt, and it was hurt for the other people explaining it. But that's an element of, how do you hold people accountable and not allowing things to happen in your organization to exist, right? And stopping, and people know when you're crossing a line, right? As much as, hey, there's crossing line and there's way over the line, right? And unwinding the negativity, because the other side is, like, these managers are working with these other managers, they'll never look at each other the same, right? There is no, even if I do the apology, it's going to be felt like a forced apology, right? It's not an honest, true apology because they're doing it to
Right.
keep their job, and then
Right.
there's no trust. Like you broke trust, you broke all these things within the organization. So part of it sometimes means you're making really hard decisions, and whether they're money makers in your organization or not, if you're going to get to the next level, you have
Mm.
to be willing to let people go if you're going to get
Oh.
there. Like, those are my, like, that's probably like, at that time, it's probably one of the most difficult decisions I had to make because you're so much
Mm.
smaller.
Right.
It affects a ton. Like I had to call all the companies we worked with, let them know the delay. Like I was already delayed. Like I'm delayed even
Hmm.
more. Like how do you, like, I'm going to lose, but I can't allow that culture to fester
Yeah.
within the organization. So
Right.
we killed it, right? And and I've had to do that one other time. No, I didn't
I
have
mean,
to
and
do it
then
at this severity.
realistically, that sets a great standard for who's left of like, hey, we
Oh,
just don't tolerate these
it, it
things.
it's a rumor. It, like, that spreads to the company. I don't mind, right? Then
Right.
they call it the mass firing. Like, Greg comes in, right? There was some gal that just, she was with us for 30, 45 days and sees this, like, just like, oh, like, just like, oh, dang, like, but it's just, it shows the other side. It shows all the other individuals that I won't put up with or
Yeah.
allow that in the organization. And I don't think a lot of owners are willing to do that,
Right.
to get to the next plateau. Like, and that's what it takes. If you're going to get to the next plateau, your organization, you're going to need to do that. And
Hmm.
after doing that, culture wise, we had better leaders, better managers, grow, develop. And, I have a team of people. Some people been with me this year. We were on for 8 years. I have people hitting 7 and 6 years with me, 5. Like,
Cool.
and it's just a long time, right? And they've been troopers through the whole process in doing it. And we've had our fair share of hiccups, right? There's, like, every organization, right? We're not doing things
Right.
perfect and whatever, and frustration, but it's been great watching it grow.
Hmm. That's cool. And obviously growing and running a company, it naturally comes with very hard decisions. But when you can see those hard decisions and then see the growth that that results in and where the fruit of that hard decision was, I mean,
Right.
that's got to feel good to know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a hard decision, but it set your company for success in the long term.
it did. It did, and, yeah, and there was all reasons why they were frustrated and whatever, right? Like, it's just,
Mhm.
when, but it doesn't, just because that happens doesn't mean you have to allow the negativity to come in
Right. Right.
and destroy everything.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think that's a really good lesson. And, I mean, something that can apply in so many different spaces. Um, as we kind of wrap up just kind of our conversation today, one question that I always ask people is if you could kind of like summarize a lesson that you've learned and share one piece of wisdom with someone who's starting in this industry. I guess it doesn't have to be starting, but
Right.
in this service-based industry, um, what would you tell them?
You're going to pay a tax one way or the other.
Hmm.
So you can either pay the tax through the dumb tax. I'm going to learn the hard way, school hard knocks, or I can go ask for help.
Hmm.
If you learn to ask for help, you'll learn to grow, scale quicker, faster, and avoid mistakes down the road. Yes, you can learn it, and I grind, and I didn't do great at school. Like, I barely graduated high school. It's just, it wasn't my thing. But through that, I had to learn to ask for help, right? So I'm always willing to learn, willing to ask, share information to grow. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I think as owners we don't do is, how do I help? How do I get to the next level?
Mm.
And what does
Hmm.
that look like? And ask help. I'm a big advocate of coaches in there. There's the initial lift as an owner, but after that, a coach really does help you get to another playing field because they
Yeah.
help you navigate through some hurdles. Like, am I hitting my profitability margins? Do I even know what margins to set? Am I When do I get into digital marketing? When do I get into this? How do I do print mail or this? Or do I hire another person or not? Or I'm frustrated with this individual. Do I have to create SOPs today? Or how do I handle? Do I have to have an HR? Like all these questions. And there's people in the space that have done this and has scaled and helped you get to other playing fields, right? And I want to get in commercial. I want to do large projects and all this other stuff. Are you ready for large projects? Do you have enough capital to get into large project game?
Right.
Like, do you have enough? Like, these are all questions that you can figure out on your own, right? But you're going to pay a tax for it, right? So you're paying a tax one way or the other, right? And so, that's probably one of the biggest ones. And then the next one after that is just systems and processes. But that you can usually get away without systems and processes a little smaller, to be honest. But you'd say it's just the truth. You can grind through up to about 5 to 10 people. You can kind of muscle your way through it. But after that, system processes really help you scale, help you get to the next plateau. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So where are you paying your dump tax is probably my question I'd ask people.
I love that. I haven't heard it put that way before, but I think it's a really straightforward way to say it. I mean, you've got 2 options. It's your choice.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So it's been great.
Yeah, this has been really great. Thanks for just having some conversation around, it's always good to talk about what people do, but I personally just love the conversations where we can dive into, like, tell me what you've learned. Tell me what wisdom you can pass on, because that, especially like as owners, as leaders within organizations, that's where we grow. That's where we develop. I would be remiss if I didn't talk to someone to say, hey, as a leader in my organization, what lessons have you learned that I can carry over into what I'm doing instead of learning through the dumb tax and learning the hard way? So it's just not worth it to grind when you've got people to lean on. So
it's you learn to ask help. You'll be amazed how far you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome.
Could
Thank
you quickly share if anyone wants to reach out to you to learn a little bit more from you or about SFY, where can they find you?
Yeah, so sfyoffice.com is where you can find us. We also have SFY University, so we have a school that teaches, sfyuniversity.com. And you can find us at 469-443-4006 is the sales line. Cool. We help write estimates and teach and train and supplement and build back, all that stuff. Or if you just have business questions, you can reach out to me as well. I like talking business, so it's one of my things I enjoy doing. Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for everyone that joined today listening to this episode with Greg from SFY. You can find this episode as well as any previous or future episodes on our website, virtualvision.com, YouTube, Spotify, all your favorite podcast platforms. And we hope you'll join us again for another episode of the Digital Dialogues.